everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Kayla and it's time to crack into a good book. So today's video is going to be my end of the month wrap up for January, where I talk about the books that I read in the second half of January. So overall I have 17 books to talk to you about today, and I did read a total of 28 books this month. So I talked about the first 11 books that I read in January in my mid-month wrap up, which I'll try to remember to leave linked in the description. But if you want to see my thoughts about, let's see, Danger's Vice, The Last Namsara, A Gathering of Ravens, Not Even Bones, Red Mars, No Exit, Tear Me Apart, The Au Pair, Tiamat's Wrath, Quillifer, and Book Love, those are all going to be in that first half of January wrap-up. So, yeah, overall, I definitely had a good second half of the month. I had some books that I really enjoyed. But, you know, I had a couple of misses, so we'll start at the lower end and work our way up. The lowest rating that I had for this half of the month was a 2-star, and so that was The Clarity by Keith Thomas. So it was supposed to be a sci-fi thriller where, like, basically a little girl gets the memories of this guy who died in World War I, and I think he was the last guy to actually die in World War I. As well as other past lives. But she is being hunted because of this ability. So, I don't know, overall it just wasn't very thrilling. It definitely wasn't what I expected based on the premise, and that's kind of like, you know, I guess disappointment in that was kind of what affected my enjoyment of this. I didn't really connect with any of the characters, which also kind of hampered the rating. Generally not as fast-paced as I thought it would be. There is an extremely graphic torture scene that I just really didn't like. The plot seemed kind of convoluted, I guess. Yeah, overall, the idea was good, but the execution was not. So, you know, unfortunately this was a miss for me, and like, I can't personally recommend it, but others, you know, your mileage may vary, I guess, with that. So now we go to a 2.5-star rating, and the book I'll talk about here is Daughters of the Storm by Kim Wilkins. So this is a fantasy book that I think some people are saying is YA, but like I don't really think it is, just based on the themes and just events that happen here. So essentially the plot here is that this king has a mysterious illness, and the oldest daughter like kind of calls her 4 other sisters to come together to find the cure for this king and basically prevent their stepbrother from taking over the kingdom. So yeah, it was another good idea, but not so great execution. So I was bored in a lot of parts here. So like, the characters were extremely dislikable except for one of the sisters who I did actually like, and I did really enjoy her storyline. Generally, I think my main complaint with these characters is that they really only had like one main characteristic, and that was like the extent of their personalities. Like the oldest sister is like the warrior, and then we've got like a religious sister, and like that's all she cares about. I didn't think they had that much depth to them, and I didn't really they were kind of just like caricatures of characters. Fun phrase to say. Yeah, there's just like a lot of really stupid decisions made here. It's a lot of people are just being very impulsive, and I was just kind of like, please just like think about what you're actually doing and don't be impulsive. So like I mentioned, I did like Ash, one of the sisters, and she was like the magic one, and so I guess her storyline was really interesting, and the magic itself was really interesting. Generally, you know, I wouldn't recommend this book. Several of the sisters were extremely whiny and shitty, honestly. Didn't feel like it felt all that urgent that we needed to heal the king's disease, which it should have been more urgent than it was. I don't know. Yeah, so this was just a bit of a miss for me, and I do know that, or I guess on Goodreads it does seem like more people like it, so it could just be, you know, this just didn't quite work for me, and maybe it works for others. So we have no 3-star books, so we will jump right into the 3.5-star books. So the first 3.5-star book I'll talk about is Oasis by Katya de Becerra. So this is a like YA sci-fi thriller book. It's kind of Twilight Zone-esque. So our main character and her friends go to an archaeological dig in the desert, and that our main character's father is leading. And basically a sandstorm hits and wipes away their camp. So our our main character and her friends find themselves in this mysterious oasis where strange things start happening. They kind of start turning against each other, and yeah, just things do not go well. A lot of our characters have to deal with trauma based on their experiences in this oasis, so that was kind of like an interesting exploration of mental health struggles that people can have, and just like, yeah, you can see how different characters react in different ways. It was really engaging. I liked the setting a lot. It definitely reminded me of Indiana Jones, and there's definitely some like references to that, which I appreciated. So my camera battery died, and I'm having to film the rest of this at a later point in the day. But anyway, I did like these Twilight Zone elements, but overall, I think I was a little underwhelmed with the execution. Like, I think mostly it could have been a longer book, but I did see somebody on Goodreads, I think, say that there might be a sequel, and the ending is kind of open-ended, so I could see a potential for a sequel. I thought it was a standalone, but I don't know for sure. I guess I kind of wanted some more strange things to happen, but what did happen was a little, you know, like kind of trippy, so that was cool. I mean, it is a YA book, so there's some relationship drama and angst to go along with that, but overall, I did really enjoy it, and I would recommend reading it. I'm undecided if it's something I would necessarily reread, but I did really enjoy it overall. The next 3.5-star book I'll talk about is The Boneless Mercies by Genevieve Tucholke. So this is kind of evidently a loose retelling of Beowulf. Our main character and this group of girls are Mercies, so basically they're hired to mercy kill people, but they're kind of tired of this life and kind of, you know, want to leave it and, you know, experience more than just these mercy kills. So they hear rumors of a creature killing lots of people, and so they head out to go investigate this and kill it. Along the way, they encounter various witches, which was kind of cool. One of the things that could have been a little better for me was that I thought the battle with the creature itself was really short, and I don't know, I could have used more than, like, I don't know, I guess it seemed a little too easy and it was a little too quick, so it's just more development there would have been great. Same thing with like the marsh witch encounter. It was over really quickly. So in the book, it kind of mentions this like witch war and then doesn't do anything with that, and I thought this was a standalone, but it, like, a lot of these events make me think that there's perhaps going to be a sequel. I'm not really sure if that's the case or not. But yeah, so generally unresolved things and just events happening too quickly for my taste, but still it was enjoyable to read. Pretty fast paced. I did like the main character Frey and the other Mercies. There were some excellent friendships here, not only between the girls, but also between Frey and this boy who's traveling with them, and, you know, it's nice to see a friendship between like a female and a male character in a book. I think this is worth reading for sure. I did have a good time with it. You know, while it isn't perfect, I still would recommend it. So the last of the 3.5-star books I'll talk about today is The Vanishing by Jayne and Krentz. So this is like a romantic suspense thriller type book where there are mysterious gases released that cause the residents of Fog Lake to develop supernatural powers. So Olivia and Catalina witness a murder in these caves, and then years later Olivia ends up being kidnapped. So, and there's like some sort of connection to the murder. We mostly follow Catalina as she teams up with this guy from like this mysterious foundation in order to find Olivia. So I thought this was fun. I definitely enjoyed the paranormal aspect, like, you know, people with powers solving mysteries or crimes or whatever is definitely something I really enjoy. There's some really interesting scenes here. Like, there's something that happens with like a music box that was surprisingly creepy and really interesting, and I was just like, what just even happened? Definitely some like intriguing concepts here. I would, I think, read on in the series. My main complaint about this book is that the romance was extremely rushed. Like, I would have preferred to see this develop over a course of several books instead of, you know, all in this short little book. I also thought we'd explore the incident that released these gases more. Like, I kind of thought we would have like a flashback and then flash forward, and well, we kind of had a little bit of that. It wasn't as much as I thought it would be. Just generally a personal preference. I would have read more about the background, but, you know, it's not that big of a deal. The main characters, Catalina and this guy that she teams up with, were quite enjoyable as a whole. If you're looking for a romantic suspense thriller or whatever with paranormal elements, I would definitely suggest this. And like I said, I do think I will continue the series and perhaps check out some of her other books. So now we get into the 4-star books. And the first book I'll talk about here is The Epic Crush of Jeannie Lo by F.C. Yee. And I did listen to this on audio and had a really great time with it. Like, the narrator is pretty great. So I would suggest, you know, checking out the audiobook for sure. But essentially, this is a YA urban fantasy that has a lot to do with Chinese mythology. So our main character, Genie, is a high school student, and she kind of learns that she's the reincarnation of something from Chinese mythology. Then we have this boy named Quentin, who is new at her school, and they basically have to team up to fight demons that are suddenly invading the Bay Area. So this was really fun to listen to. Like I said, the audio version was pretty fantastic. There's definitely some like silly high school drama and angst, but you know, with like relationships and everything. Genie is a fun and pretty like sassy main character, and her interactions with Quentin are very amusing. I don't know too much about Chinese mythology, so I really appreciated having it here and just like learning more about it and everything. I think the next book comes out sometime this year, possibly pretty soon, so I think I'm going to check that out. The next 4-star book I'll talk about is Wildcat by J.P. Harker, and I did receive this from the author for a review, and I buddy read it with Kat from Brews and Reviews, and I'll leave her channel link down below. So this book we follow Rhea, who is a Kadaran warrior, and she wants to be like a wife and mother, but she also wants to fight. So a lot of this book has to deal with like her trying to balance all of her wants and desires. So then we have the Gaians, who are essentially like the Romans, kind of invading their territory, and they have to fight each other. Rhea ends up being forced to marry Gaian noblemen to ensure that, you know, her people don't really rebel and to kind of calm things down, I guess. But then we have some plots by the Gaians, I'll just say. So she essentially has to choose between her people and the Gaians, who, of course, she's married into now. This was a really enjoyable read. I definitely had a great time buddy reading it with Kat. We split it up, and so we were reading like 3 chapters at a day, and it was just so fun. We would like, you know, talk about our predictions and what we thought was going to happen, and you know, just react to certain events that were going on. But yeah, so if you can, or if you want to buddy read it with somebody, like, I highly suggest it. It's a ton of fun. First 100 to 200 pages were definitely a slow start, I will say. There's kind of some, like, I don't know, I guess a little bit unnecessary parts about just wanting children and getting married and everything, and there's definitely like this awkward scene in the bathhouse where she and her friends are bathing, and then her father walks in and like is kind of checking them out and starts up a conversation with them. So that was like a little uncomfortable to read about. But after the second battle, things start to really pick up. It definitely, you know, kept going pretty strong throughout the rest of the book. There's definitely some content warnings for like rape and darker things. So I think J.P. Harker really shines when he's talking about the battles and politics. Like, those parts were fantastic. There were definitely moments where I actually like gasped out loud, because I was like, there's no way that actually just happened. What? So I really appreciate an author who is like willing to go certain places with his characters, and, you know, like, no one is necessarily safe, I would say. So yeah, that's kind of a fun touch. The ending kind of left off a little open-ended, so I am curious to see what happens next. I did like Rhea for the most part, not as much in the beginning, but kind of like I mentioned, I think the beginning was a little bit weaker than the rest of the book, but as we progress, I did really end up liking her quite a bit. I admire her courage. I like seeing, you know, that how she is able to fight for those she loves and everything. I will say this is more historical than I was really anticipating. There wasn't as much like magic and fantasy as I thought there would be, but that's fine. But overall, this was a really enjoyable book. I would recommend picking it up for sure. The next 4-star book I'll talk about is The Remaking by McLeod Chapman. This is a horror book. So in 1931, Ella Louise and her daughter Jessica are basically burned alive for being witches. And then this kind of starts this urban legend. And then in the 70s, somebody is making a horror movie based on Jessica, the daughter. During the filming of this movie, a child actress who is playing Jessica it's kind of found almost dead. So this kind of, you know, continues more of this urban legend aspect. And then in the 90s, there's a meta remake of the movie, where bad things essentially start happening again. This is a very fast-paced story. There's obviously some creepy elements to it. I liked Amber, the child actress, quite a bit, and I did appreciate seeing her, like, struggle, I guess, throughout the years to cope with these things that have happened to her. It's definitely a tribute to horror movies for sure, and I think fans of horror movies will really enjoy this. I guess there's some content warnings for some drug abuse here. For some reason, I thought that the witches died much earlier, like 1600s or something, not 1931, but that, you know, that was that was just me getting some idea that I have no idea where I got that from. But yeah, so we do have multiple time periods here, so that was kind of cool to see, you know, just the progression of this urban legend and whatnot over time, and I really had a great time with it. I would definitely recommend it for sure. The next book I'll talk about is How Rory Thorne Destroyed the Multiverse by Eason. So this is kind of a blend of sci-fi and fantasy. I mean, it's mostly sci-fi, but there are some like fantasy tropes and things that happen in here. So the main character, Rory, is blessed by 12 fairies and cursed by the 13th. So this is where we get like these fairy tale elements coming in. So she's cursed to essentially be a human lie detector. Her father, who was the king, ends up being assassinated, and she learns that her little brother is suddenly the heir to the throne, and she has to get married to a prince of another planet. So she obviously is not thrilled about this, and has to outwit the regent of the prince in this other world. So this is a really fun book. There's some science / magic that's basically like manipulating mathematical principles, so of course I loved that. The main character, Rory, is fantastic. I really liked how intelligent she was, and it was cool to see like how she uses her various fairy gifts to save herself from this fate. There's some fun things happening, like you can like see and manipulate auras, which I thought was cool. And then we also get more sci-fi elements like biomech, implants, and things like that. Rory is definitely a headstrong main character. There are some fun relationships and like friendships with the bodyguards and her advisors. I don't think it's going to be for everybody though, mostly because of the narration style. Like, sentences are pretty lengthy and extremely descriptive, so if you're not into that sort of style, I don't think you will have a good time with this. Mostly because it slowed me down a little bit for sure, so I think it would slow others down as well. Saying that, you know, I still really enjoyed it. It was really cool. It's a very fun blend of sci-fi and fantasy, and I do recommend picking it up if you can handle the narration style. I think this is a duology, and I'm definitely going to be picking up the next book. So the next 4-star book I'll talk about is A River of Royal Blood by Amanda Joy. I did buddy read this with Tiffy E, I believe, and I'll try to remember to link her channel below. This is a YA fantasy that's North African inspired. I've got 3 types of people here, so like the Fae, these Chimer, which are kind of chimera people, and humans. So our main character, Eva, is a princess, and she has magic of blood and marrow, which is really cool. That's kind of, you know, a darker magic, and it's neat to see that. So Eva is attacked by an assassin and kind of like needs to learn more about her magic in order to survive. Basically, the premise here is like, in this world, princesses have to fight each other to the death so that the strongest becomes the queen. So she has to eventually fight her older sister. It's really an engaging book though, and I did like the magic and the different types of people in the world. I thought Eva was a great main character. She's very strong, and I love the sort of books where you follow a main character learning about their magic or abilities or whatever. So we definitely get a bit of that, and that was awesome. I'm not completely sure why it wasn't a 5-star read for me. I did really like the romance that ends up developing here. There's definitely some content warnings, like, you know, there's some not so great relationships between siblings and parent and child relationships. Maybe the ending was a little bit rushed, and there's certainly some of this, like, you know, I don't know if it's really a trope, but some miscommunication that causes drama, but like overall it wasn't really all that bad. Overall, I mean, I really liked it. I'm definitely going to be picking up the next book. If you're looking for an interesting YA fantasy that's like an African inspired setting, I would definitely check this out. The next 4-star book I'll talk about is Summoned to 13th Grave by Darynda Jones. So this is the 13th and final book in the Charlie Davidson series, which I've talked about a few times on my channel. So this is like a paranormal romance series where Charlie, the main character, is the Grim Reaper. So throughout these books, Charlie, who's a private investigator, has to like solve cases, and there's more like larger scale events happening here as well. So in this particular book, kind of the final showdown, I would say. So Charlie, again, has to, in this book, solve multiple mysteries while preparing for this final battle and kind of like needs to close up this demonic rift that has opened up. Evil things are coming out and infecting people. So she obviously wants to stop that. This continues to be an enjoyable series. Charlie is very like sassy and highly entertaining. I am pretty satisfied overall with the ending of this book, and you know, obviously it is the end to the series, and I'm pretty happy with how it ended. There were some really crazy reveals happening here, and like I did appreciate it on one hand, but on the other, like it could have been nice to see clues leading up to it. Like I was just completely blindsided, which, you know, again, isn't the worst thing in the world. The very last line, I was just like, what just happened? What did I just read? It opens up a lot of questions, and I am kind of like, how can we walk away from Charlie now? So I don't know if there's going to be a follow-up series following Beep, who's like the child in the series. I kind of, based on how it ends, I kind of think we will, but I don't really know for sure. So overall, I had a really great time with it. And I like do highly recommend this series. I've very much enjoyed all of these books. It is pretty smutty, just FYI. So the last of the 4-star books that I'll talk about is A Princess in Theory by Alyssa Cole. So I did actually get this as a gift from Sarah Hart's Books, and so thank you again. This was so much fun, and yeah, thank you so much. So this is a romance where the main character gets emails saying that she's betrothed to an African prince, and obviously she's like, this is just spam, right? This is not legit. It is legit, which is highly amusing. So our main character Letty, is actually an epidemiology grad student, so I liked that aspect a lot because that's very similar to what I do. So the prince comes to America in order to like meet Letty essentially, and you know, figure out why she's not responding to his emails. There's definitely some misunderstandings that happen, and so they definitely like learn more about each other, and the truth comes out. We also have a like mysterious illness element, which was really cool. Of course, I love that. But yeah, so it's a really enjoyable romance. I liked them together for sure. Like I mentioned, I loved that she was an epi grad student. Like this was very relatable to me personally, especially because she's into like researching infectious diseases. Of course, it's a romance, so there are certainly some predictable plot points, but our main character is very slow to trust based on events of her past. This was maybe a little frustrating at times, but totally understandable given the things that had happened in her life. There's some great side characters in here too, which I think we follow them in the other books in this series. Obviously, since like this African prince is coming to America to find his bride, and you know, there's a lot of plot points around that definitely remind me of the movie Coming to America, which is fantastic. I love that movie. So that was just kind of fun to see, and yeah, if you're looking for a fun romance book, definitely check this out for sure. I had a great time with it, and I do want to continue reading this series. So now we get into the only 4.5-star book that I will talk about today, and that's Blind Tiger by Rachel Vincent. So this is the second book in this Wildcats spin-off series to the Shifter series that she wrote, and I talked about that and I've talked about this series before on my channel. But basically, it's like an urban fantasy paranormal romance series where the Shifters are like big cats, essentially. So in this world, female Shifters are not all that prevalent, and so they're kind of like highly prized because they want to continue their species, I guess. So in here we follow Robin, who is a stray, and so that means she's like infected against her will and not like a hereditary shifter. So she, I think, is the only female to survive being scratched. If she's not the only one, you know, there's only a handful of women who survive this transition. So Robin needs to learn how to control her shifting, and she's kind of kept in a highly controlled environment. She ends up kind of running away with Titus, who is the alpha of the Strays, I guess, and this definitely causes some drama with the other packs of shifters because Robin kind of broke her promise. Then several people kind of end up being scratched. This is a really fun book, and there's definitely some smut in here, but overall I really liked them together. Titus isn't really as much of an alpha male as you see in other books. Like, he's definitely an alpha male, but he is more considerate of Robin's feelings, which I certainly appreciate. I did guess what was going to happen, but like, you know, it was still really enjoyable. Definitely really liked the world, and I appreciate Robin's desire to be free and not really like under so much heavy control. While I was reading it, I was just like, I kept being like, oh, I'm just gonna read one more chapter, just one more chapter, just one more chapter. So like, it was just really great. I could have read more, you know, if this had been several hundred pages longer, that would have been great. But overall, I'm very satisfied with the story, and I think there's one other spin-off book in the series that I would like to pick up as well. So if you're looking for a good paranormal romance series about cat shifters, definitely check this out. I would suggest reading the actual Shifters series before reading the spin-off books, just so you'll know more about who these characters are and everything. But yeah, it's really great. Definitely would recommend checking out Rachel Vincent's work. So now we get into the 5-star books. And the first book I'll talk about here is Beneath the Twisted Trees by Bradley P. Beaulieu. So this is the 4th book in the Song of the Shattered Sand series, and I finally got around to reading it. Basically, the premise here is like, this is a fantasy world inspired by like the 1001 Nights. So we've got like this desert setting, and our main character, Shada, is trying to like seek revenge against the 12 kings in Cherokee by like killing them all. In this, you know, it is the 4th book, so I don't want to say too much, but Shada is trying to free the Asirim, who are these creatures, we'll say, and she obviously is trying to continue her quest to kill more of these kings. There's certainly more like blood magic and necromancy, which is always interesting, and there were some interesting developments on that front. The gods also get more involved, which was kind of cool. We do follow, I think, more characters in this, and that was neat. I did, you know, like, while I do like Shada the best, it is nice to see the storylines for these other characters, and I do also like them. There's this plague element that comes up, so obviously I love that too. So this continues to be a great series. The writing is really excellent and drew me in for sure. This is definitely one of my favorite, like, desert fantasy book series. There's fun battles, it's an interesting setting, and of course I love, you know, this involvement of the gods. I will definitely be continuing this series, and I do recommend that you check it out for sure. Alright, the next book I'll talk about is Would Like to Meet by Rachel Winters. This is kind of a rom-com, I guess, where the premise here is Evie, who is an assistant to this like film agency, must get this writer to deliver the rom-com script that he promised. In order to do this, she basically has to go on all these like meet cutes to prove that all these techniques in rom-coms actually can work in real life. And she basically has to do that, obviously, and she needs to get this script that is promised, but she is trying to save her job as well. This was absolutely hilarious and charming. I loved it so much, and definitely suggest reading it. These meet cutes were just so funny, and I definitely was like actually laughing out loud. And my fiance was just like, what are you laughing at? I was like, oh no, it's something in the book. But yeah, the book club one especially was really funny. I did predict what kind of book club it was, but seeing it confirmed and just like all of everything to do with that was really funny. Evie, the main character, is very endearing and just wonderful, and it's nice to see her develop through the book and like start standing up for herself a little more. I definitely rooted for the romance in here, and it was so great. The side characters are all really great too. They're, you know, her friends are very supportive of her, which I certainly like seeing. It's a really feel-good book, and I highly recommend it. The next book I'll talk about is Bitter Falls by Rachel Caine. So I did this as a buddy read with Amber from Books of Amber and one of her friends, and I'll leave Amber's channel linked down below, of course, but this is book 4 in the Stillhouse Lake series. Essentially, the main character, Gwen, finds out that her husband is a serial killer. People think that she has been helping him. She becomes like the victim of online hate groups, and, you know, people send her these really awful things, as well as her children. So she kind of is trying to escape that, but it like moves away, and there's, you know, there's a lot of drama with like this whole serial killer aspect, but In some of the later books, she starts becoming like a private investigator of sorts. So here, she is investigating the disappearance of like a college-age boy. She ends up finding a cult and has to deal with them. So, you know, obviously it is a thriller, so I don't want to like spoil, and the fourth book in a series, so I don't want to spoil too much here, but there's certainly some drama still from this background and like issues with the town and other people hating them. It was really great though. It's, you know, it's a very intense book series for sure. I really have no idea how Rachel Caine keeps coming up with these like super intense plots, but she does. I feel really bad for the kids. Like they definitely have trauma from their past experiences, and you know, some of it's very sad. It's just a really engaging series. I like Gwen quite a bit. She's, you know, obviously has to deal with all this like awful shit, and it's nice seeing how she like copes with that and tries to protect her family, and you know, she's just very intelligent and kind of kick-ass, and she's just great. If you're looking for like an intense thriller series, I would definitely check this out. Okay, so the last book I'll talk about today is The Library of the Unwritten by A.J. Hackwith. So this is kind of like an urban fantasy, I would say, where Claire, who's the main character, is the head librarian of the Unwritten wing in Hell's Library. So this wing kind of like houses all of these unwritten stories that were like unfinished or just, you know, for whatever reason by their authors. So she is generally in charge of like repairing and tracking down books that have awoken. So these books, when they wake up, kind of like materialize as characters from their books. So she, at the beginning, has to track down a book that has, you know, that is awake. So Ramiel, who's an angel, kind of thinks that Claire, along with a former muse and a demon, kind of like control this devil's Bible, which it's just like a very powerful book and artifact, and like can kind of, yeah, I think it was like reshape the boundaries between heaven, hell, and earth. So basically a lot of this book is racing to find this devil's Bible. It's a really cool concept for sure, and awesome locations, like, you know, there's forgotten realms and things inspired by mythology. I really liked the characters. Like Claire is one of these intelligent heroines, and she's kind of no nonsense, but kind of thaws out as, you know, the book progresses. I really liked this idea of books coming to life. Yeah, there's some like fun traveling going on. There's some awesome battles. There's like a duel with words, so that was really cool. Haven't really seen much of that before. Generally, it was an engaging book, very easy to read. The characters develop over time, of course, and it's just fantastic. Like, what more could you ask for in a book? So yeah, if you like reading books about books, or if you're into urban fantasy, I've definitely checked this out. So those are all of the books that I read in the second-ish half of January. There's definitely a lot of like 4 to 5 star books here, so I had a good second half of the month. Let me know in the comments if you've read any of these books or think you might pick them up, or just generally have other thoughts to share. Like if you want to tell me, speaking of Oasis, you know, or do you like to watch The Twilight Zone, and what episodes do you like? I particularly like the Nightmare at 20,000 Feet episode. I hope you're having an excellent day and are reading something awesome. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to give it a big thumbs up, as that would certainly help me out. But with that, I think I'm going to wrap it up here and see you in the next one.